There are prisons designed to punish, and then there are prisons built to break the human spirit. Somewhere in a remote, desolate corner of the world exists a facility so brutal, so inhumane, that even hardened criminals whisper about it in fear. This prison isn't just a place for incarceration, it's a final destination where inmates are not expected to be rehabilitated, but to simply rot away, forgotten by the outside world. Nicknamed by locals and former inmates as Hell on Earth, this facility has gained international notoriety for being one of the darkest, most secretive, and most terrifying places ever created by man. Unlike typical correctional institutions, this prison operates more like a dungeon from the medieval era. Surrounded by barbed wire, barren wastelands, and constant surveillance, it is virtually impossible to escape. But physical escape is the least of an inmate's worries. What truly makes this prison infamous is what happens inside: the psychological torture, the forced isolation, the starvation, the total erasure of one's identity. Inmates are stripped of their names, their rights, and in many cases, even their sanity. Many who are sent here are political prisoners, whistleblowers, or those deemed too dangerous to be kept in normal facilities. The prison doesn't just house criminals, it devours them. There are no rehabilitation programs, no family visits, and in some cases, no sunlight. Prisoners are left alone in dark, freezing cells for 23 hours a day, with minimal food and zero human interaction. Some are never even officially registered, disappearing into the system without a trace, ghosts behind concrete walls. International human rights organizations have tried for years to investigate the facility, but access is nearly impossible. Cameras are not allowed, journalists are blocked, and those who have managed to leak information about the prison often end up silenced, mysteriously disappearing or dying under suspicious circumstances. Those who survive long enough to be released speak of a living nightmare, stories of beatings, psychological torment, forced labor, and conditions so harsh that prisoners beg for death just to escape the pain. This prison isn't just a blemish on the justice system. It is a symbol of fear and unchecked power. It exists in the shadows, operating under the guise of national security or justice, but in reality, it functions as a death sentence, slow, cruel, and deliberate. It's a place where time stands still and hope doesn't just fade, it dies. This is the introduction to a place that defies logic and morality. This is the gateway to hell on earth, a prison not meant for justice, but for eternal suffering. The prison known as Hell on Earth wasn't built overnight. Its creation was born out of fear, control, and a deep desire by authorities to create a facility that could erase people, not just from society, but from existence. Constructed in the early 1970s during a time of political unrest and rising crime, the prison was officially presented as a maximum security correctional facility. But behind closed doors, its true purpose was far more sinister. Governments often create institutions to solve problems. In this case, the problem wasn't just violent crime, it was dissent. The region where the prison was built had long been plagued by rebellion, activism, and resistance against oppressive regimes. Leaders feared that regular prisons were too lenient, too exposed. What they needed was a place to bury their problems, both literally and metaphorically, a place where troublesome voices could be silenced permanently, without trial, without evidence, and without question. The location was chosen carefully. Remote, freezing, and cut off from civilization, it ensured that no one could stumble upon the facility by accident. It was surrounded by treacherous terrain, icy mountains, deadly cliffs, and harsh winters. Even if someone managed to escape the walls, they wouldn't survive the landscape. The isolation also meant there were no witnesses, no journalists, no lawyers, no families. Construction was overseen by the military, using both civilian contractors and prison labor. The design was intentionally claustrophobic and bleak. Underground chambers, reinforced steel doors, soundproof walls, and surveillance systems that recorded every second. The walls weren't just meant to keep people in, they were meant to crush the human soul. Cells were deliberately made too small to stand or lie down comfortably. Ventilation was poor. Lighting was non-existent in many areas. The architecture itself was a weapon, designed to disorient, destabilize, and destroy any sense of self. Officially, the prison was meant for the worst of the worst, terrorists, murderers, and traitors. But unofficially, it became a dumping ground for anyone the state wanted to disappear. Journalists who asked too many questions, protesters who refused to back down, even rival politicians who posed a threat to those in power. Over the decades, thousands have been sent there, yet there are no public records of most of them. Their names erased, their identities lost, and their fate sealed the moment they crossed the gates. What makes this prison especially horrifying is that it was never about justice. It wasn't built to reform, or even to punish in the traditional sense. It was built to dehumanize, to isolate, to erase. The men who designed it didn't want prisoners to serve a sentence. They wanted them to disappear into darkness and never return. Today, it stands as a monument of cruelty, a chilling reminder of what happens when power is unchecked and fear becomes policy. Once the heavy steel gates of the prison close behind an inmate, a new kind of existence begins, one that can barely be called life. Inside the walls of this hellish facility, time loses all meaning, and the basic concept of humanity is stripped away piece by piece. For those imprisoned here, survival is not guaranteed. In fact, the system is designed to break them down until death feels like a release. From the moment a prisoner is admitted, they are reduced to a number. No names, no identities. Their belongings are taken, their hair is shaved, and they are thrown into concrete cells so small that even stretching out is impossible. Most of these cells are underground, with no access to natural light or ventilation. There is no bed, just a cold, damp floor. Blankets are rarely provided, even in sub-zero temperatures. The walls drip with moisture and the air is heavy with the stench of mold, urine, and decay. Inmates are kept in solitary confinement for 23 to 24 hours a day. This isolation isn't just a form of control, it's a methodical way of dismantling the mind. With no interaction, no voices, no movement beyond their tiny cell, prisoners begin to hallucinate, lose sense of reality, and eventually lose their sanity. Many are denied any reading materials or writing tools. Communication between prisoners is strictly forbidden. Anyone caught attempting to speak or signal to another inmate is brutally punished, often with beatings, starvation, or days without water. Torture is not only common, it is routine. Guards use electric shocks, forced stress positions, and even psychological manipulation to torment inmates. Some prisoners are dragged from their cells for interrogation, only to return covered in bruises, burns, or worse. Others are locked into pitch-black isolation chambers for weeks, with no sound, no food, and no human contact, a method designed to mentally shatter them beyond repair. Medical attention is a privilege very few receive. Those who fall ill are often left untreated. The sick are ignored, and the injured are told to heal on their own. If someone collapses, they may lie in their cell for hours or even days before being noticed, and even then the response is minimal. Mental health care is non-existent. In fact, prisoners showing signs of psychological distress are often targeted further, seen as weak and expendable. Food is another form of control and punishment. Meals are barely enough to survive. A piece of stale bread, a bowl of watery soup, or sometimes nothing at all. Guards have been known to intentionally spoil the food or mix in unknown substances. Water is often restricted, leading to dehydration and illness. On some days, inmates are told they will not eat as a form of collective punishment. Regardless of individual behavior, even sleep is stolen. Guards shine lights into cells at random hours, bang on doors, or play loud noises through speakers to keep inmates from resting. These methods of sleep deprivation push prisoners into a state of constant fatigue and paranoia. Over time, the lack of rest and overwhelming stress leads to severe breakdowns. Some scream uncontrollably, others fall into catatonic silence. Hope, in this prison, is a foreign concept. There are no visitors, no letters, no trials, no end dates. For most inmates, the outside world has forgotten them, and they in turn begin to forget it. Days blur into weeks, weeks into years, until identity, purpose, and sanity are gone. Life inside this prison is not life. It is a slow, deliberate death, inflicted through silence, starvation, and endless suffering. It is a descent into darkness, designed not just to punish the body, but to destroy the soul,